Hi, everyone. I'm here with Keith today to talk about the power of sales forecasting. So just to introduce myself, I run a team focused on sales planning and planning AI at Anaplan. Just a little bit on my background, I was with a company called Mintigo, which was actually acquired by Anaplan. And then before that was with Sears Decisions for 10 years. So have been working with sales and marketing leaders for a very long time. So really excited to be chatting with you guys about sales forecasting. So Keith, I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Francine. Happy to be sharing the stage with you today. So just to introduce myself, Keith Jackson with Spalding Ridge. I'm in the sales performance management area at Spalding Ridge. My background is pretty long in the Anaplan ecosystem. So I was a customer of Anaplan first at Hewlett Packard. I worked there for about 15 years. In the last 2 years there, I helped them implement their original Anaplan solution. And then I actually went to work for Anaplan for a number of years. I went out into the partner space to continue doing implementations, and I've been doing that ever since, and primarily focused on SPM use cases over the past 5 years.
Great. Thanks, Keith. So I wanted to help set the stage in terms of what we're going to talk about today, and then I'm going to pass it to Keith to get to some of the meat of how Anaplan can help and how Spalding Ridge helps our customers. But in terms of some of the business challenges we see, these are some of the key things we're seeing, and across the different organizations I've worked with, we've seen as well. But just to kind of go down the list here, we do typically see that, when you're thinking about your forecast and when folks are rolling up their forecasts, a lot of the data is subjective, right? You've got your sales managers, you've got your sales reps, all providing forecasts, and that's based on their intuition. So that can be a challenge, right? Because you have different numbers that are being rolled up. And then secondly, obviously, we all experience this with COVID. There's different things happening externally in the market, which can really impact the buying patterns. And it's not, when you look at what's been happening over time, it can really contradict each other. So we really saw that obviously over the past 2 years. And so we really had to think about our forecast differently, which accounts had a higher propensity to buy, et cetera. And then this is another one. Actually, I'm going to get into an example a little bit later, but a lot of organizations we work with have different CRM systems, have Excel spreadsheets. They've got just data everywhere where forecasts are being rolled up and data is being rolled up, and they all kind of either contradict each other or say something different. So really having that one source of truth is really key. So that's one of the biggest benefits of Anaplan, which I'm going to talk about, and so is Keith. But that's one of the challenges we see. And then lastly, just in terms of the reporting hierarchy, there's kind of different disciplines across different teams. Different folks are forecasting things differently. You've got the sandbaggers, you've got the folks with the happy ears. And so those numbers just are going to really look different across the forecast. And so you really have to, kind of take a look at that. And that could be a challenge for an organization, especially as you guys get larger and there's bigger teams, and you want to look across those different forecasts. So all of this can have a huge impact on an organization. So some of the impacts that you'll see is missed revenue targets, the inability to plan, just limited insight into the future investment. And then I think one of the key ones is really the misaligned sales execution. So when you're forecasting opportunities that may not have a high propensity to buy, you're spending your time and your salespeople's time in the wrong places. So being able to take a look at trends and some of the metrics and being able to make those recommendations, I feel like are really, really key when you think about your forecast and some of the power that Anaplan can bring to, your forecasting, your planning moving forward. So I'm going to just touch on some of the benefits that our customers see when they use Anaplan for sales forecasting, and I touched on some of these already. But one of the key ones we'll talk about is just being able to streamline and roll up across the different multiple hierarchies across an organization and across different CRM instances, so you can really pull in data from different places. Also, I think one of the cool things is that you can bring in third-party insights. That third-party data can also make a huge difference in terms of the visibility into your forecast and the trends that you're seeing. I think one thing I mentioned as well is just kind of the propensity and the ideal pipeline. So, are those opportunities that are being forecasted have the high propensity to buy accounts? So that's going to be key. And then there's an Anaplan, and we'll show some screenshots. There's different things that you can track. So it's not only rolling up that high level forecast, but it's also rolling up the different metrics you see here. So volume, margin, consumption, renewals. So, at Anaplan, I think it's great because every week we've got our forecast call. We go through Anaplan, we look at the high level forecast, and then we start to dive deeper and deeper into those metrics. So you'll see, why did these deals push? We'll take a look at, what's the gap between the forecast and the numbers that we need to hit. And then we'll really take a look at where are trends, where are regions where we can dive a little bit deeper and better understand where we can really get to that number and leverage some of the opportunities that we have in those other regions. And then lastly, just looking at, I mentioned some of these trends, but things like velocity, conversion, discounts, kind of when you look at the selling style, as in at Anaplan, there's different regions and there's different region leaders who have different styles, right? And they forecast a little bit differently. But I think what's great is Anaplan gives you that visibility and takes a look at the trends and, folks that have been able to succeed and how they were able to succeed and, what their pipeline looks like and supporting that forecast. So I'm really going to turn it over to Keith now to talk a little bit about, Anaplan and some of the things that he's seen within his customers and how sales forecasting really connects the organization, which I think is really key across sales, finance, supply chain, et cetera. So Keith, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Francine. So just to tag on to where Francine ended up is, I'm going to tell you the typical story that I see with our clients that are looking to do forecasting in Anaplan. So typically the analysis part is probably the last part that most operations teams get to, because what they're doing now is they're getting manual reports from their ERP systems and their CRM systems. And sometimes there's multiple CRM systems that they have to bring together because there's a lot of organizations that are buying other companies and not doing the immediate conversion. And what this results in is the operations folks spending a tremendous amount of time just creating this Excel workbook every month. Part of the issue with that is obviously they're not spending time on the trends. They're not driving action out of their forecast. They're spending their time actually putting the forecast together. The other thing is that CRM systems like Salesforce, for instance, you can put together a forecast in there, but it has certain limitations in that it doesn't allow you to do scenario-based planning in there. It's really driven off the opportunity status within Salesforce. So you can see what the sales reps have put in for the current opportunity status and put together a forecast for low, medium, high propensity to close. But then how do you go and take that and put other knowledge into it? Your operations people, your executives. The versions as well, like how can you do a version in a CRM system to where you have the plain forecast that has been unadulterated, and then you add your knowledge to it. So you want to be able to compare those two and see what the differences are between what the data tells you and then what people have from a intimate knowledge perspective. And then reporting on different dimensions also becomes more complicated. So a lot of companies like to use their sales forecast and turn that into a revenue forecast, and from there break it down by product and region and many other slices and dices of data that maybe their ERP system has. So tying that all into Anaplan is definitely a win for multiple reasons. So from my perspective, usually what we're doing when we're making a sales forecast model is we're setting up a import of data from the CRM, from the ERP systems, from manual Excel spreadsheets that may be maintained offline as well. Because a lot of companies have certain pockets of their business that just aren't in their systems. They're just running it off of Excel. And combining that, if there's a set format in Anaplan, it's very easy to set up import actions that bring in all this data on demand or even on a scheduled basis. So taking that whole lift off of the operations teams to go and gather all this information, get manual reports, put them all together into Excel. With Anaplan, it can be as simple as clicking a button and going out and loading all the files that have been dumped out on a server location. Now I'm going to talk a little bit just about connected planning in general. So what are people doing with sales forecasting? Sales forecasting in and of itself should not just be a silo activity, meaning that's the only thing that you're doing. You have a lot of valuable information that you can get out of the sales forecast to help other areas of your business. For example, the demand management portion, the revenue planning and OpEx planning, as well as your marketing performance overall. So the information you're getting out of sales, converting that into a revenue forecast, going back to your supply chain and telling them this is the demand that's coming based upon what we know about our sales forecast. That's a powerful tool right there. Additionally, most companies that I've worked with in the sales performance management space have been taking that sales forecasting information and revenue planning information and flowing that back into their territory and quota setting process. So we have usually in the territory and quota space is we have the past historicals and then we have a future projection so that we can set targets for the next year. Sales forecasting and revenue planning definitely feeds into that process and gives a good view of what we're going to do for the next year. We don't have to rethink it and go through that whole process separately during our incentive setting process. So if we can go ahead and flip to the other slides here. Just have a few screens from Anaplan that I wanted to talk through at a high level. And Francine, feel free to jump in here and add any color that you see appropriate. But to start out with, we have a screenshot of an RVP level view in Anaplan. What this allows the RVP to do is to go and look, see what their waterfall is across all of their pipeline and see how they're performing the plan and what the gap is to that plan. This is all loaded from a Salesforce tool. Actually, I believe this is something that Anaplan uses on a weekly basis, or if not daily. And so we're loading data in from Salesforce. It's coming in to a pre-configured view and showing the roll-ups at the different levels by the opportunity status. So you see this, the won, the canceled, the closed, and other likelihoods. And then you're seeing how the forecast is measuring up against the plan on the grid there. And in addition, we have some buttons over on the right that allow them to start analyzing some of the data set up that we have, the rules in the grid below on the screen, to where we can look at our stalled opportunities. So if something's been in a pipeline, was expected to close, and then just didn't ever progress, we can go look at those and very quickly and filter down to those records. We can also look at date alerts and stage alerts so that we can keep our pipeline clean. So Francine, anything to add on here?
Yeah, I think the one thing I was going to add is just if you're interested in seeing how Anaplan leverages the tool and how we use it proactively every week on our forecast calls, I'd be happy to walk you through that because we actually have a demonstration of that. But it really is very proactive and being used constantly. And so again, to analyze kind of where we are, where the gaps are, what do we need to do to hit that revenue number? So happy to share that with you if you're interested in seeing kind of how we leverage it internally.
Yeah, same thing on the Spalding Ridge side. Actually, we use Anaplan internally for our operations as well. So as a partner of you guys, we're also a customer of you. So
sure.
Thanks for letting us do that.
I'll flip to the AVP view so you can talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so the RVP can go through, do their forecast, and then we go to the AVP and they can see their different RVPs forecast here, to where they've submitted their forecast. They see how that rolls up to the AVP level. It allows them to drill down into the different levels of detail by region and shows the forecast changes week over week. So this is the versioning view that I was speaking about earlier. With Anaplan, it's relatively easy to set up versions so that we can close the forecast for the current week and previous week and compare those two and see how it's changed over time and start doing some trend analysis.
Yeah, one thing I was going to add here too is just we talked a little bit about overriding things as well. And one of the cool things I see in our instance is you can see the rep, if they've committed it, the RVP, the AVP, all the way up to senior leadership in terms of who's committed the deal. And again, we use whether it's in commit, upside, pipeline, et cetera. And I think it's really interesting to have that full view of, whether folks are committing it and then being able to make those overrides where we see appropriate. And when we think across sales and finance, finance wants the ability to make their own decisions as well on forecasts and what they want to roll up. So again, they have the ability to do that at the different hierarchies. So I just wanted to add in there as well. So I'll flip oh, good.
No, I think that's perfect because, one of the things that I've seen with our clients, there's different groups. So you have the sales putting their forecast together, you have the operations group putting their forecast together, and then you have executive leadership putting their forecast. And to be able to lay all those over each other and see the view at each level is a pretty powerful tool, because then you can have the meaningful conversations that says, okay, sales, you're saying this, and we're seeing this on our side. So how do we reconcile those two and get to a more accurate single source of truth around this, to your point earlier?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and then from Anaplan's perspective, the charts and graphs that we have and the ability to set up formula-driven views that show you your forecast over time and how that compares to your plan that you set at the beginning of the year is very important. And that's really what this screen is showing. Is talking about the forecast for our different stages of opportunities, and then how that's feeding into our forecast plan. And what are we projected to hit at the end of the quarter, year, half year, whatever time frame that we're looking at. And then being able to apply changes dynamically, so making overrides and seeing how that will impact our forecast. And then finally, we have this VP summary view here, and this is really just an aggregation from all the different levels of planning. We see the overall company forecast and trends, as well as broken out by our different product groupings on here. Like I said, we can break out pretty much anything in Anaplan that you need from your forecasting perspective, whether it's products, whether it's product groups, whether it's just overall sales teams. We can look at it and slice it and dice it in many different ways and make it dynamic and connected, so that you're not having to individually forecast by that individual dimension that you want to see. You're planning at once and all the dimensions are connected. So therefore your views are just really pivots of your data at the end of the day.
And I think one thing to mention, and again, this is kind of near and dear to my heart, but if you've got overlays or folks that are focused on specific offerings, because my team is specifically focused on our sales offering here at Anaplan, being able to see, how that particular line of business is performing, I think is really helpful. So again, if you've got organizations with tons of offerings and you want to dive into the metrics for that particular offering, I feel like that can be really helpful with the Anaplan and having that visibility, which I know can be challenging with some of the other, with a CRM tool potentially. So, again, I find that really interesting. And again, if you're an overlay sales leader, happy to share with you kind of the metrics that I leverage on a day-to-day basis and the type of model that I'm leveraging when I'm building my forecast for my area. So I'll flip over. I think I was going to take over here. I think that was the last of our screenshots. Yep. This is more of a summary of some of the differentiators for Anaplan. So, we talked a little bit about this, but I think one of the greatest things about Anaplan is being able to build those different scenarios. So I'm sure as a sales leader, you've got that number, you're trying to hit that number. Potentially the forecast across your different sales leaders doesn't roll up to that number. So you're trying to figure out, how am I going to get there? Who needs to overperform because you feel like potentially another area is going to underperform. So I think being able to build those scenarios is really, really, flexible in Anaplan. So I think one of the key differentiators you'll see, if you go to the right there on the predictive intelligence, I mentioned being able to bring in third-party data, and we have our own third-party data that we collect, being able to leverage intent data as well as account scoring to figure out, whether something's in the forecast where it didn't have a high propensity to buy, should it be in the forecast? those are the types of things that you can leverage within your forecast within Anaplan. And then when you think about the performance monitoring, obviously being able to look at those different levels across the organization and analyze, what their performance looks like. Are they hitting their number? Are they not? Have they been sandbagging in the past and they've overachieved? So that visibility is going to be key as you roll up your forecast and as you take a look at the trends over time. And then from a real-time collaboration, I would say this is really key when you think about across different departments. I mean, not only within the sales organization, but, connected planning at Anaplan thinks across finance, supply chain, sales, marketing, et cetera. So they want to know, what sort of opportunities are being rolled up. And then even post-sale, obviously your renewals teams, your customer success teams, they want to know what's coming in as well. So I think that collaboration, that alignment is really key within Anaplan. And I think one of the beauties of Anaplan is bringing everyone together. And again, back to that one single source of truth. So anything to add here, Keith? Otherwise, I'll
I guess just a couple little things. So just from the scenario modeling and forecasting. So I don't ever see many companies that are just stagnant and never change throughout time. So part of the beauty of Anaplan is, hey, we acquire another company and they have their own CRM system. Well, as long as we can get things into the format that we've been using, it's pretty easy to get that data in and continue the forecasting process without reinventing the entire wheel. If you want to add in other dimensions to report against, Anaplan is very flexible in how that we can configure things and set up new reports and new modules to allow you to see that data and start slicing and dicing that. And then, just from the collaboration perspective, making sure that we can add users easily and that we're not spending time putting that forecast together. It's actually, hey, let's go do the forecast and get that work out of there so that we have visibility into it. And then where does that feed into our different parts of the organization?
Perfect. Thanks, Keith. So we'll leave you with this customer example, which I think, again, speaks to everything we've talked about today. So DocuSign is one of our customers, and a couple of the challenges that they had is really that consistency across the different processes, across the different groups. And they had really different numbers being rolled up, different ways that they were approaching their forecasts. And, they were growing really quickly. And so they really needed to understand, what are the numbers we're going to roll up? And are we able to get to our revenue goals? Kind of where are we? So I think, and again, I'm sure that's near and dear to a lot of the folks that will listen to this hard. So one of the benefits is they were able to kind of take all the data across the different areas and be able to roll that up into that one area, and being able to have that one, the numbers all in one place, but also being able to create alignment across the different teams, and then really give the visibility to leadership in terms of where are we going to end. So I think being able to have that data readily available, being able to access that data, being able to de-risk the fact that, everyone's got different forecasts and, where are we really going to end, I think are some of the key benefits that DocuSign saw, especially and across a number of different customers as well. So I think we've, kind of spoke to a lot of these different areas, but I think this is a real life customer that's leveraging us today, but happy to share others if you're interested in kind of seeing what they're doing with Anaplan and how they're leveraging us. So we're leaving you with that, but Keith and I, really love the topic of sales forecasting. We're passionate about it. We spent a lot of time talking about how Anaplan can help. So both Spalding Ridge and Anaplan are here to help, and we're happy to have follow-up calls with you or give you other examples of how we've helped our customers in the past. But obviously for all the sales leaders listening, our goal is to help you guys drive those revenue goals and continue to support that growth. So hopefully both our organizations can help you do that in the future. So really appreciate the time and thank you for listening.